Prepare to win with PFF Fantasy. Use PFF's exclusive rankings, projections, advanced statistics, and more to win your draft in August and set the best lineups through the end of the regular season. Made special for the podcast listeners, use PFF promo code 49erspod to save 20% on PFF's Edge or Elite subscription anytime between now and the end of the season. Go to PFF.com to sign up today.
You've tuned in to the 49ers Rush podcast, and here is your host, John Chapman.
All right, 49ers fans, welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush podcast. I'm your host, John Chapman, and you are not mistaken, ladies and gentlemen. This is 2 podcasts, back-to-back days. This brings our total to 4 podcasts in the past 7 days. I'm hoping to keep this up because I'm just having too much fun, and I love that everybody is responding to the podcast, and there's lots of good stuff out there right now. I really appreciate that. But without further ado, this is going to be an awesome episode. We are going to finish up day 8 of camp. We're just going to talk about today's practice. This is Sunday whenever I'm recording this because the 49ers have off on Monday. Due to the CBA, you can only practice on the field 4 days in a row, and so we get Monday off. Then we have 4 days practice, a day off, and then our preseason game. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're going to go over practice and then an updated 53-man roster projection. So several changes have been made by the front office already, which we've talked about on here. But I want to kind of focus on, man, it's a guessing game right now. You know, Kyle Shanahan was asked today, man, what are you going to do with the receivers? Is it possible to keep 7? You usually keep 6. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, we're going to be cutting guys that should be starters. It's just kind of where we are. So without further ado, let's get into everything. Starting off with the injuries, we have some good and we have some bad. Good news, DeForest Buckner was back after a few days' absence with his toe injury. He was back at it today and he looked great. They kind of phasing him in. He didn't take his normal snap numbers, but he was out there, no problems there. Quan Alexander as well is starting to get phased into team, and it was awesome. His second play out there at team, he made a hellacious hit against Matt Breida at the line of scrimmage, and just the defense erupted. You know, defensive line coach Kasurik just went nuts, as he always does, but you could tell right off the bat, if Quan Alexander is able to stay healthy, he is going to be a trendsetter for this defense, which is absolutely great. Bad news a little bit is Dee Ford and the tendonitis in his knee. He didn't practice today, and Kyle Shanahan said in his press conference that he went and got a PRP. And what that is, I'm going to probably mispronounce this, it's a platelet-rich plasma treatment where basically you just inject it in your knee and it just stimulates growth of cells so that it can fight through this. Now, it usually takes at least a week, those are Kyle Shanahan's words, to get over this. So don't be scared. Dee Ford's going to be out a week. And it was funny because Kyle even said he could play through this the whole year. We have people do this. You know, Joe Staley's had one of these before as well. But why not take care of it now instead of having this linger and perhaps having to do it in the season and then he misses a game? So just, we've got plenty of time. Let's get it out of the way. Outside of that, no real big injury news. Marquise Goodwin was on the ground for a while today, ran into another player, and just kind of looked like knocked the breath out of him. He was able to pop up and jog off, but he was down for a minute with his breath out. So a couple things, just 49ers news, brick by brick, which is the 49ers kind of, you know, all or nothing or behind the scenes look, whatever you want to call it. So that is airing every Wednesday for the next 5 weeks. So we have 5 more episodes of that. The first one's already out. So head over to YouTube, the 49ers channel, and go ahead and watch that. It's an absolute awesome way to just see kind of what happens behind the scenes, which is always a lot of fun. Do want to say before we jump into the practice report, thanks to the beat writers and the people that are there at camp. Really can't do this without you guys. Rob Loader, Jeff Denny, Matt Mayoko, Eric Branch, Jacob Hutchinson, just to name a few. If you're not following those guys on Twitter, go do so. They're the absolute best, and this podcast would struggle mightily without their work. So just want to say thank you. So the quarterbacks this week, it was interesting. Up and down for sure. However, I do think that the offense definitely won the day today in camp, which you can't say very often. Maybe 2 or 3 days of the 10, the offense has done extremely well. Jimmy Garoppolo goes 14 for 21. Now, interesting of note, he still has not thrown an interception during team drills, which is great. He did get pretty close to throwing an interception today off of a tipped pass. Sheldon Day tipped it up in the air, and it was almost intercepted, but dropped right before the player went to the ground. So still no interceptions from through training camp, and he was sacked once by, you guessed it, Nick Bosa. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. I want to focus on the offense for now. Quarterbacks, Nick Mullins went with a third stringers again today, but he had a hellacious day. 11 for 13 and a touchdown pass. He did really, really well with the number 3s. Kyle Shanahan decided to give him even more reps after he just continued to lead this drive down the field. So because of that, CJ only went 6 for 10. He didn't get near as many snaps, even though his pass attempts were as high as Mullins. It's not really what happened. The snap differential was much larger than the pass attempts. CJ had a terrible pass that was intercepted. Basically, Kyle Shanahan scripted this out and said, the question was asked, what happened to CJ and why did he throw it straight to the defender? And what would happen is the back was supposed to get out into the flats, which would clear out the backer on a slant route. Okay, that's the issue that happened, was the backer stayed in to pass protect. So because the running back stayed in to pass protect, that linebacker was able to get depth and to get into the throwing lane. Now, the quarterback read is if you can get an inside release on the corner, the wide receiver, then you should be able to throw that. But because he didn't pay attention to the back's hot read to pick up pass pro, he threw it straight at the linebacker. So take that for what you want. It is what it is. Deebo Samuel led the team in catches today. He had 3 catches and a huge touchdown during team. It was a deep ball on the right side. He jumped over a safety to make an amazing catch and then just strutted into the end zone. It seems like we cannot go a day without our safeties getting just destroyed deep at least once or twice. This is a very common occurrence. And the sad thing is, it's not like it's just one of the safeties. It's all of the safeties. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the safeties, this team's going to go as far as the safeties will allow us to go. It's just what it is. So Deebo did say that he is only playing at the X position right now, and he is just there exclusively, which is really smart because the 49ers playbook with Kyle Shanahan is not simple. It's not simple at all, which brings us to our next rookie. Jalen Hurd started getting some snaps in individual at the F position. Now, the F position is kind of the move tight end spot, so not the inline tight end, but usually, whenever you see George Kittle off the ball or spread out wide or even as like an H-back roll, he's getting a little bit of work there. So Kyle Shanahan is staying true to kind of, putting him there. He has seen some snaps in the slot as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now with that offense, which is great. And staying with that kind of wild card, offensive weapon or whatever you want to call it, Kyle Juszczyk, Juice, started off practice. He's had a really quiet camp, but that's kind of the player that Juice always is going to be. He's the type of guy that he's not going to show up in the stat sheet. He doesn't get a lot of carries. I think he's had 8 over the course of the entire year. And, he might get 30 to 40 targets, but his infamous wheel route, the second play in team, he ran his wheel route and got left alone. He beat Malcolm Smith for a long pass from Jimmy Garoppolo. He didn't get in the end zone, but it was probably a 40 to 45-yard play. And that's kind of what it is. There's little things that Kyle Shanahan can scheme up with Juice just because he's so versatile. And before I do jump over to the offense or to the defense, I do want to make a note. Mike McGlinchey, he is just great. The gift that keeps on giving. If you were watching the 49ers live practice on Saturday, it was Friday or Saturday, I don't remember. But as they're recording the live feed on the website, YouTube, everything else, didn't catch this live, but the video is now out there on Twitter. In the middle of practice, Mike McGlinchey turns around and goes and takes a piss while the camera is live on the players. And so Mike McGlinchey's just got his back to the team, and the camera just taking a whiz against a wall in practice. When you got to go, you got to go. this is kind of Mike McGlinchey's he's awesome, man. Love that guy. Now let's go to the defensive side, and you have to start with Nick Bosa. I understand. I've been called out for it, that I like Bosa too much, and I've been very high on him since the start of the draft process. Don't care. Bosa is unstoppable on defense. He's leading the team in sacks. He is leading the team in tackles for loss, and he's doing it against the 1, 2s, and 3s. He's beat every single offensive tackle on our roster at least once, and today he had to go against Kittle one-on-one in team. I don't know why they didn't chip or whatever. He just blew right past Kittle. And Tevin Coleman got the ball right off the edge, and he got there so fast, Coleman was still trying to read the hole, which wasn't there. So he got a tackle for loss and then stripped the ball, poked the ball out of Tevin Coleman, and Emmanuel Mosley scooped it up and got a scoop and score off the turnover on that. And then on top of that, he also had a sack and multiple pressures in today's practice alone. And all of this has been happening on a limited team snap rate. So Kyle Shanahan said, we haven't allowed Bosa to get more than 12 team snaps a practice. Today, he got 16. He's been doing all of this at about 70% of the snaps as most other defensive players. And he's doing it against everybody. So really, really excited to see if this can continue. I think you could not be more pleased with how he has practiced. He's definitely the defensive MVP of training camp so far. I don't know if that's really an award, but if you had to pick one, it would go to him for sure. Offensively, I'm staying with Trent Taylor, but I tried not to talk about Trent Taylor today, and sure enough, there it is again. Anyway, moving on. Defense, another rookie, Drake Greenlaw. Man, he had a hell of a practice. He got an interception off CJ. He was the linebacker that drifted into his passing lane and picked that off. And then he also had a tackle for loss and a pass breakup against Kittle in man coverage about 20 yards downfield. He kind of laid out and was able to knock the ball away. It would have been a huge gain for Kittle. And again, there was no safety help behind him, so if Kittle did catch it, he might have been gone on that one. But absolute amazing practice by Drake Greenlaw. The big dudes up front, Sheldon Day and DJ Jones, both put in solid performances. We have not heard their names very much, but Sheldon Day had a pass breakup at the line of scrimmage. That was the Jimmy Garoppolo pass that was almost intercepted. And Kwan Williams, man, this is awesome. We keep getting new guys that are showing up and kind of making the highlight plays. He stripped George Kittle over the middle to force a fumble. And so, man, if you could take anything away from today's practice, the offense did great, and they were getting moved on up and down the field. But every single time where it was just, and Kyle Shanahan alluded to this as well, once the defense was getting tired and they were on their heels, they were able to force a big play, whether that was a sack or a turnover, or a fumble, anything, interception. So just props to the defensive unit. And there were a couple things that Kyle Shanahan talked about in his press conference that I just kind of wanted to pay a little bit of attention to. One of those is Fred Warner. They asked how Fred's doing back there calling all the plays. And Kyle Shanahan said, he came in as a rookie, and he handled everything just fine. And everything just seems second nature for him now, and he's running everything out there. He's very, very confident in what he's calling, and everybody's looking to him as the leader on that defense, which usually happens with the Mike role. But it's absolutely great to have just Warner back there just holding every single thing down. Now, he was also asked about the wide receiver rotation and who's going to be cut. So he said, the picture's not getting any clearer. We have a lot of guys that need to be starters, and we're going to have to let some guys go that we don't want to, and we haven't really had that problem here. He said it's a good problem to have, but we haven't had that issue here in the past 2 years. It was very easy to do 53-man rosters the last few years because there wasn't that many quality guys. This year, it's a mess. And the wide receiver, the safety position, and the defensive line position, there are just way too many bodies. Now, the wide receiver and D-line positions are good. The safety position is bad, just with a lot of bodies. And the question was asked, what does Marcel Harris have to do to guarantee his spot on this 53-man roster? And Kyle Shanahan did not hold back. He has to become the best strong safety we have, the in-the-box guy, and he has to beat out Tart. to guarantee a spot. That's what he's got to do, and that's what all those other guys have to do. But Marcel Harris has not been consistent. He is a flash player, but again, a lot of times whenever you hear the safeties getting beat deep, he's been one of them. So it's something that he's got to work on there. Now, QB2 question was asked again. He still said it's way, way too early, but he feels confident in both. And then it was interesting. They asked, are we going to do any live tackling drills in training camp this year? And Kyle Shanahan said, absolutely not. He said no team, this is Kyle Shanahan talking, no team that he has been on in the past 10 years has had a training camp live tackling drill. And he's not going to start now. Just saying health is just too important, and it's just not worth it. So, you take what you want there. It's kind of what it is, but you do what you got to do. All right, now it's time for the 53-man roster. So here we go. This is updated. Just finished it today. Here we go. All right, I'm going to give you the number of each position that we kept last year, and then the number that I project we will keep this year. They are all almost the exact same. I do have a change this year with offensive tackles. I have us keeping one less and keeping one more safety. Other than that, the numbers are pretty much the exact same. So quarterbacks, right off the bat, I have us keeping 2, Jimmy Garoppolo and Nick Mullins. He deserves it. There is a possibility we keep all 3. That is a strong possibility if these 2 guys do not separate themselves, and just Kyle Shanahan cannot move on from letting one of these guys walk out of his building. So if they don't trade one, it is a possibility we could keep 3. And if we do keep 3 quarterbacks, man, I think that's going to knock off a safety spot. Running backs, I have us keeping 5 in order of their position depth chart right now. You got Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, Jerick McKinnon. Then I think you got Kyle Juszczyk, and then Raheem Mostert. And you could say, man, we shouldn't keep Mostert. That guy is a lock because of special teams. I would argue that he has as much value to this team as Jerick McKinnon does, if not more. So, whatever. Wide receiver 6, I think we're going to keep 6 again this year. Pettis, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd, Marquise Goodwin, Trent Taylor, and Kendrick Bourne. And this is the group. And I understand there's going to be a lot of people that are like, man, screw you. We're keeping Richie James. I hope we do keep Richie James. But you can't keep everybody. Kendrick Bourne has his niche role, and that's red zone targets, which is the biggest concern with the offense and Kyle Shanahan's offense. So are you going to take away the best red zone wide receiver threat that has just dominated training camp in that area, whenever he is the only guy that is big that can do what he did? Jordan Matthews has not had a great camp, so I really do think that this is between Kendrick Bourne and Richie James. I want to keep them both. I wouldn't be mad if we kept 7, but again, somebody's got to be let go. Tight end, 3 tight ends last year, 3 again this year, and a shakeup on the depth chart. Kittle's number 1 for sure. Ross Dwelley, I think he's our number 2 tight end. He has been absolutely incredible blocking. He has been explosive in the receiving game, which we didn't expect. I think he's the number 2 guy if the season started today, and we would keep Caden Smith. That puts Levine Toilolo out and Garrett Selleck again. With him going to be out for at least 6 weeks into the season probably, I don't think that they're going to keep him. That's just me. Now, tackles, I think we're going to keep 1 less than we did last year. Staley and McGlinchey, they are locks. And Justin School, which I think that he's going to be the guy there, and those are the 3 they're going to keep. Now, interior offensive linemen, this was a huge change as well, because the majority, myself included, I thought Eric Magnuson was going to be the backup interior offensive lineman. He's been released. So I was keeping 5 interior guys: Weston Richburg, Laken Tomlinson, and Mike Person. They're going to be our starters. Ben Garland is a lock for the roster now, especially with Richburg hurt. And Najee Torin, who has stepped up. Josh Garnett he's been hurt. It's just can't get out of his own way. Najee Torin has stepped up big time. And so I think him and Ross Reynolds are kind of fighting for that last spot. Maybe if Josh Garnett gets healthy. But how do you rely on that guy if you're this coaching staff? Just his health. The best ability is durability, and he has 0. So that's the offensive side. Let's jump over to the D-line. I didn't divide it from outside or inside because it's not fair to do with this team. We have so many guys that play all over the place. So 9 defensive linemen, and in not necessarily order, but let's start with starters. DeForest Buckner, Bosa for sure, D Ford, Eric Armstead, and then after that, this is not necessarily where question marks start, but I think this is the second tier of that depth chart. Solomon Thomas, DJ Jones, Kentavious Street, Ronald Blair, and Julian Taylor, which if that was the case, that means Sheldon Day is going to be out. So this is another one of those positions where you can say, okay, let's keep an extra guy. Let's keep 10 defensive linemen. But again, you got to drop somebody. Okay, what position group's going to lose someone? And I think the linebacker group is one that could lose. You know, we kept 6 here last year, and a lot of that had to do with Reuben Foster. If you remember, he was like his suspension and all that stuff, so we needed an extra guy. Linebackers could be 5. It really could. But I have us keeping 6 as of now. Fred Warner, Quan Alexander, they are locks. I'd say Drake Greenlaw is probably the next lock. I do have us keeping Malcolm Smith. We do not save really anything if he is a cap casualty, and he can play all 3 spots. So not that he's safe, but I do think he makes the roster. Elijah Lee and Mark Nzocha, so we have some guys out. You know, David Mayo has had a good camp. He could be one of those guys that kind of jumps up in this and knocks somebody out. But with Mark Nzocha, special team stud. Elijah Lee, huge upside guy that can back up all 3 spots. Dre Greenlaw, he's not going anywhere. He's probably going to be a starter. Cornerbacks, 6 last year and 6 again this year. Sherman and Verrett, Kella Witherspoon, those guys are kind of locks. Kawan Williams, Tim Harris, and then I have us keeping Emmanuel Mosley. He has been showing up big time. He really has. He's been around, and I think that's one of the ones where it's like, man, this guy can actually make it. Now, if we go to the safety position, which again, some of these guys have moved around, however you want to classify them. I'd put DJ Reed's going to be in there for sure. I had him as a safety here, but you could put him in the corner one. And again, if he's going to be kept, who's going to be bumped out? Tim Harris? I think Tim Harris would be the next one. Emmanuel Mosley would be the next one. So again, safety, I have us keeping 1 less, but this is going to be a rough one. Jaquiski Tartt, Adrian Colbert, DJ Reed, again, I counted him here, probably shouldn't have done that. Jimmy Ward, and man, that's going to bump Marcel Harris out. Because if we're keeping Tarvarius Moore, which I think he is, and he needs to be counted as a safety, that guy's going to stay. I think he's going to be there, which would bump, again, Marcel Harris out. Because when Kyle Shanahan was asked today about Marcel Harris, he didn't think twice. He was like, he's got to improve and beat out Tartt. Otherwise, who knows? And then, of course, our 3 special teamers, Robbie Gould, good old Mike Wisnowski, and Colin Holba, our long snapper, which brings our total. That is going to be our 53-man roster. As of now, if John Chapman was the GM, which probably thankful for the 49ers fans, that is not the case. But that's what we got today. And before I jump off, I do want to say head over to manscaped.com. Use the promo code 49ersRush. Again, get 20% off, free shipping, and a free travel bag. Man, it's an awesome product. Please head over there, manscaped.com, and use the promo code 49ersRush. But anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Back-to-back day episodes. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And please reach out to me on Twitter if you disagree. If I said something that you just pissed you off and you just don't understand why, let's have a conversation. The best place to do that is on Twitter, at JL_Chapman, at JL_Chapman. And as always, please hit subscribe, rate, and review the show. That helps us out a lot. Appreciate it, guys, and have a great rest of your day.